Hey guys, this is going to be really uncomfortable for me to sit at a podium and not walk around while talking, but this is what they told us we have to do. So I am going to try to keep the wiggles on this side of the podium to protect everybody's health and safety. But it is so nice to be here to see people face to face, and it's a little intimidating, to be honest, because most of the classes I teach are at the university, of course, to students, but also in Atlanta to strangers. Now I look into the crowd and I see some of my friends and some people who know me from the community, and I think, oh no, I'm really going to get judged here, and I'm a little nervous, but bear with me. So yeah, I'm Natasha Ganem, and I am founder and owner and principal consultant with Lion Leadership. Lion Leadership is a consortium of really smart coaches, facilitators, and consultants, all dedicated to making work awesome for everyone. So the day-to-day in the life of a Lion Leadership team member looks a little different than it once did, but we spend a lot of time on the phone coaching managers. We spend a lot of time on the phone coaching business owners. We spend a lot of time coming into companies and hosting or facilitating retreats, strategic planning retreats, team building retreats. We do a lot of management or lunch and learn seminars just for further professional development. And so it's fun to be here today where I can talk to a group of people at once instead of one company at a time or one client at a time. Today we're going to be talking about stronger people, and because that's the question on everyone's mind, right? How do I get the best people in to work for my company? Where do they come from? First of all, is there a magic honey hole of great people that I can recruit from? How do I get them into my company? How do I train them rapidly? And then how do they stay? Right? Because that's one of the biggest pain points I hear from business owners is, I get somebody in, I'm super excited about them, I pour 2 years of my life training them, and then they leave. Hands in the air if this has happened to you? Okay. We're going to cover that all and more. All the pain points of obtaining, training, and retaining top talent. So with that said, I'm going to flip to the first slide. The pain points for obtaining talent. This is what I hear from my clients and from my company owners. I hear, number one, the people are hard to find, and they want to know where they can recruit from successfully. I hear a lot about salary. Like, it's very hard for a small business owner to offer an amazing salary that makes somebody, trip over themselves to come to work. So they ask, do I have to offer more money? Can I do something else? People also are very concerned about a new hire fitting into their company culture, because a lot of times, Ryan and I were just talking about this, you spend a lot of blood, sweat, and tears making that culture unique and strong and not toxic, and you worry, will the new hire fit into this culture, or will they take it in a different direction? So what I hear people asking me all the time, what interview questions can I ask? And then also I hear about, like, oh my gosh, we are so busy. I don't have time for this. I just need warm bodies, because we're blessed and we're able to be so busy. I just need warm bodies in the door. So these are the things that my clients and the business owners I talk to day in and day out worry about. But interestingly, these are not the same things job seekers are worried about. This is what your candidates are worried about. Can I find work that I like for a fair amount of pay, with opportunity to learn and to grow, that fits with my life, with people who are great to work with, and for a boss who cares about me? These are two completely different set of concerns, and they need to be aligned if you're going to get the strongest people possible, because the more that you can offer what they want, the more you can expect what you want. The more you can offer them what they need, the more you can get from them what you need. So I'm going to walk through these pain points and then come back to the candidate's perspective, okay, to get us through how to do this successfully. Now, if you came to this session thinking, I'm going to share a couple of mindsets with you or give you an inspirational dose and a pat on the back, that's not me. I am a trainer. I'm going to give you a big, long to-do list. So get out your notebooks and your pencils, because we got things to do if you're going to find the best people possible. It's going to take a minute of your time to do this and to do this right. But once you get the flywheel going on a great enter and exit strategy in your company, you don't have to worry about it ever again. So question number one, where can I recruit from successfully? Everybody asks me this. Now, I have friends who are recruiters, and for specialty, for special positions at certain title levels, I will, say, hey, you need to call this person. They can get a placement for you. But for the majority of people out there, I'm going to tell you where to recruit from successfully, and it's from the people who are already working for you. Okay, the people who are already working for you, the rock stars that you love and you wish you could clone, they know where to find their twins, right? And if you ask them, they will share those resumes with you. And if you inspire them to be ambassadors of your brand, if you incentivize them to recruit for you, for example, if you were to offer somebody in your company a $1,000 finder's fee for the position you currently have open, they would be tripping over themselves to get that position filled with someone they know. You make the people in your company your recruiters, and you're going to have a lot more luck. So, and this is what I find with my clients, my coaching clients. They're in their office, they're in their corner office, they're the company owner, right? Or they're in their car going somewhere, and they're just worrying about this in their head internally. And this is all I have to say to them, is just ask your people for help. The trick, though, is when you ask your people for help, they start bringing to you candidates that look just like them, which is great. If you want the same type of person working for your business, you have an employee that you love, you want to clone them, you ask them to refer someone to you, they're almost the same person. But what that does do is it builds a homogenous group of people, and that can be a bad thing. Number one, that can be a bad thing because it doesn't introduce any diversity into your organization, which immediately is going to pack your ability to innovate and to serve different markets. So that's not a good thing. But you can encourage them to find people unlike them demographically, but like them in terms of skill set and values. Another idea, if you're struggling to find a warm body to fill the positions you have open, is to workshop the idea of what do I do? So not just ask your people to help you or incentivize them to recruit for you or even give them some guidelines. Bring them into a lunch and learn and say, let's workshop this. Where are we going to find the next great star for our company? And don't leave until you have 5 great ideas. I think Chad Brown was talking earlier about you have to brainstorm on your business. Right? Instead of just worrying about it and interviewing people who are coming in blindly through Indeed, there's got to be a better way. And I can give you advice, but the best ideas are going to come from your team who knows your company best. So bring your team in, workshop some ideas with them, and get very aggressive about having a bench of talent. What you want to do now is you want to build that bench. So the next time somebody leaves or the next time you're able to grow, you already have a stack of resumes to grab from and to call back and to say, hey, look, I had this on my desk before we opened this up to the public. I wanted to see if you were still interested. In an ideal situation, you would never be posting it the way that you are now. In an ideal situation, you would aggressively have a bench of talent, people just waiting for the opportunity to come to work for you and your company. And then you can pick up the phone and call them. Okay, so the next pain point and question I hear, do I have to offer more money? And I think that temperature in the room just went up because this stresses owners out beyond measure. And my answer to you is no, you actually don't have to offer more money. You have to pay fairly. You don't have to offer more money. You have to offer more clarity. And no, you don't have to offer more money. You have to slow down the interview process. So let me unpack what I mean by that. This is an instance where I'm starting to get the wiggles up here, and I wish I could walk around the room, so I'm just going to look around frantically at new faces to feel comfortable. So I'll say, your job descriptions should be perfected at this point. You can't be scratching your head wondering, how do I get somebody in here? I can't find anybody. Natasha, help me. If you don't have a killer job description that you love. Because a job description is going to signify to a potential candidate that you have your act together. And everyone wants to work for a boss who has their act together, right? So you've got to get clear in your job descriptions, crystal clear in your job descriptions and your titles. You also have to get very clear about the person you're bringing into your company, the position you're hiring for. What is their growth trajectory? Okay, in 2 years, are they going to still be holding that same title? Or do you have a plan for them in mind? Do you have a custom plan for that position in mind? Because every 2 years, people are going to want to level up. Either it be some sort of raise with a minor title adjustment, or some sort of promotion with a major title adjustment. And if you can't bring in somebody in the trench level of your business and know exactly where they're going to be in 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, 14 years, then this is a you problem. Because candidates want to know what opportunity lies ahead for them. And so it's incumbent upon the person hiring to be able to tell them that. And if the company owner hasn't brainstormed on exactly what those career trajectories are going to look like, then there's no answer. And that's why you don't have someone to hire. It's because you're not answering the questions that matter most to them. So you need to get very clear with those job descriptions, very clear with what you expect as the career trajectory. You have to have a clear performance management process. And I know everyone just twitched when I said that. Performance management is sometimes like the bad word in organizational consulting and the HR work that I do, but it's actually one of my most favorite things to focus on with clients because it is the most powerful way to make sure your people are great. So in case you missed it, gone are the day of annual performance reviews. We don't do that anymore, okay? People working for you want to hear from you every 3 months. That doesn't mean you have to document the review every 3 months, maybe every 6 months, but in between there needs to be some sort of performance conversation happening between a direct report and a supervisor because let me go back. Ooh. Remember, they want to know, will I be able to do work that I like for a fair amount of pay with opportunity that fits my life with people who are great to work with for a boss who cares? And that performance management conversation symbolizes a boss who cares, who wants to work with that person to get them to the best level that they can get to. There we go. So you have to get clear with your job descriptions, your career trajectory, your performance management, and your org chart. How many of you guys have a business that has more than 15 employees? More than 20? More than 30? Okay. So the larger you get, the more important that org chart is. And when I say org chart, I mean it needs to be drawn out on a piece of paper for everyone to see. Now, most of the time when small business owners come to me, they have an org chart, but it exists in their head. Or they have an org chart, but it's incredibly outdated with the wrong titles on it. Or they have an org chart with like names on it, like Ron and Deborah and Bob. You know, it's not the shadow boxes that you would expect. New hires want to see an org chart. They want to see a picture of it, and then they want to know where the position that they're applying for is on it. Because especially not millennials, but now the Gen Zs coming out of college and the people that are in high school before them, they have an intense need to know exactly what value they bring to an organization and where they fit into the organization and what their contribution does for the greater organizational whole. And if you can't explain to them through their job description and the org chart and their career trajectory and a kind of mission, vision, value for your business, why that job is important to move that company forward, then they're not going to want that job. And you're constantly going to be looking for new people. The last thing to get crystal clear about is what programs and benefits and paid time off that you can offer employees. They're going to want to know when they're interviewing, and they're going to be too bashful to ask. So when you're bringing in people to interview, if you have a packet that you can give them that details for them all that information about your company, they are going to love it. Okay, they're immediately going to be attracted to working for you because you're going to show them that you have your act together, that you care about them, and that you have a plan for them, right? It's like, who knew you had to market to people you're trying to hire? But that is the name of the game now. That's how it works. And I'll tell you a little bit as to why. For those of you who consider themselves in the Gen X generation, kind of like 39 and above, okay, and beyond. Right, so when we made a long distance phone call, it was like 10 cents a minute, right? I mean, and there was no Zoom, There was no, interwebs. So if there was a job in Seattle that you were qualified for, you had no idea, And even if you did, and you picked up and moved to Seattle from Georgia, you wouldn't see your family, so it was unlikely you were going to make that trek. You wouldn't be able to find an apartment, you still had to pull out a map to drive to there, right? So that is just not the way the world works anymore. So some people think of younger generation employees as job hoppers. And I'm here to tell you that's not necessarily the case. But what is happening is their networks are that deep and that wide that they're hopping because they can. We were tied to the business in the city we grew up in, right? And we were tied to that person down the street who was friends with our parents who hired us, because that's how wide and deep our networks were. And that's as far as technology would allow us to go. But now it's a completely different world. So yeah, younger people will leave jobs very predictably after a couple of years because they can. There's more competition out there. So yes, you do have to market and communicate clearly with your job, with the people applying for your jobs. So another question I get all the time, is what interview questions should I ask? Because everyone wants to weed out the people who are not going to serve their company well, and they want to do it in an interview. And there's actually a very clear recipe for this. Number one, you need to ask questions about the job requirements and your job desirables, their tactical and technical skills. You should be able to see that on a resume and ask about their technical experience in your industry in a phone interview. But then when you bring them in for a face-to-face interview, you ask them about their values and you ask them about their experiences. You ask them to tell you about a time where they had to have a very difficult conversation with someone and it didn't go well. And what you're looking for is number one, an answer, because if they have an answer, then they probably have at least some experience that you're looking for. And number two, you're looking for them to dictate what they learned through that horrible conversation. You're going to have to ask them, what is something you value and what's an example of you living it out in a hard way, right? You're going to ask them, hey, our company values creative collaboration. Can you describe for me an experience that illustrates you living out that value? Our company values making sure it's done right. Can you tell me about a time where you had to burn the midnight candle to make sure something was done right? And then you look at their experiences, but importantly, you look at their ability to share those experiences and their ability to tell the story of their experience. If they can take you through the roller coaster of emotion that's supposed to come with these stories, then you're looking at a pretty solid candidate that has the communication skills most businesses are going to want. The next step is you have to ask, and maybe in the second interview, you're going to need to ask them questions about how they fit with your mission as a company and how your company fits with their mission as a life. Because that fit is what gets tweaked after time goes by, and that's when you have people leaving. So if you come to understand a candidate as someone who's probably going to be with you for 2 or 3 years, that's fine. Just know they're going to leave after 2 or 3 years. If you want someone to be with your company for the long haul, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, you're going to have to understand where they see themselves in life in 5 years, 7 years, and 10 years. And you're going to have to ask them, where do they see themselves? And then you're going to have to be satisfied with the answer. But that also means as a company owner or as the hiring manager, you need to know where your company is going to be in 5, 7, and 10 years. And you need to be able to share that with them. Because if you don't fit in terms of your life trajectory and your career trajectory and the organizational trajectory, it's never going to work. So once you get the questions for your interview process for a particular job description, you write them up, fix it and forget about it. I think it's like a Fix-It commercial, right? Fix it and forget about it. Fix it and forget about it. Get your interview, get your job description clear. Get your career trajectory for it clear, get your org chart clear, get your performance management process clear, get your interview questions selected, package it up, and be done with it. Every time you're hiring for that position, you have a playbook. Because the last question is, who has time for this? Not the last question ever, but the last question about obtaining talent is this: who has time for this? And what I'm telling you is your managers 100% do. And if they don't, something's broken in the company. Your manager's job is to obtain, train, and retain talent. That is their only job. If you have managers who are doers, and they're so much so doers that they don't have time to manage, there's a dose of management training that needs to come into your organizational fabric. Because the managers are the people who teach, they mentor, they coach, they love on people in your company. And a good example from a client meeting just the other day, they listen to their neighbor, Jimmy John, talk about their aunt's golden retriever. That's what managers do, is they sit there and they listen to all the stories. Because it's about building a relationship. Again, I'll go back to this one more time. I should have cut and pasted. People want to do work they like for a fair amount of pay with opportunity that fits their life, with people who are great to work with, for a boss who cares. So managers are there to establish and develop strong relationships with direct reports. Because listen, in business, things are always going to go wrong. And to the extent that you have a good relationship with your team before it goes wrong, the better you're going to be able to pivot when it does. Okay? So before I move on to the next point, which is pain points for trading talent, what resonates with you so far about obtaining talent? What is the hardest thing from your perspective on getting great talent in the door? Y'all are all here for a reason.
I know that guy will say something. It's hard to find people, honestly, who are willing to work hard. That's the struggle I have.
But I challenge you there, because this.
I'm in construction.
But
not white collar workers. I'm dealing with blue collar workers.
Mm-hmm.
They don't quite have the same mentality as me necessarily.
What about the people who work for you now?
They're good, but it's taken from training from within mostly. But that runs out.
So do you think that there's a lack of leadership to model until people get into your company? Like, why do people not want to work hard?
I think it's in their being a lot, but I'm not saying all. But I own a utility construction company, so we work outdoors. I have to work in the elements of this, that, and the other. So I'm just saying, like, that's what I have.
Problem with.
People that do that and then want to aspire to go up levels. And we've grown from within, but then you've done that, and at some point it does not happen. You need to be able to recruit from outside.
Yeah.
So actually, that's what I wanted to hear, like, what's the best way? And the recruiting service isn't good for my workers, so Indeed or whatever, newspaper, that's what you end up going to. So,
That is hard, because then the black hole of applicants happens. I would encourage you to drive through the people you already have to find other people for you. And
the incentive, so I've already put that out there for $500 if they get someone and they stay on 90 days. And actually, we handed a check to a guy in front of everybody, hoping that would, like, get it going, but
no luck still?
a few, but not as much as I was hoping.
Yeah. It does make you scratch your head, because there are people out there who want to work. There are a lot of people who are unemployed right now. People want and need to work. And there are people out there who will work hard. The question is, where do you find them? Driving through the people in your company is step number one. Pulling people in your company into a brainstorming session to really think about it is step number two. And then, maybe somebody here has a good idea for you. The power of the group. Who else is struggling with the same thing? Sort of. What business are you in? Okay.
We gotta have like skilled workers, they gotta know kind of the trades. So
Right.
finding those type of people, the pool of people seems to be a lot smaller than we're just hiring unskilled people. So
Do you go straight to the trade educational program, the technical program?
We're getting a relationship with Athens Tech.
Yeah.
So we get maybe one recruit a year, two recruits a year, that are kind of vetted for us by them. And sometimes those are not as good either. So
Are you guys, is anybody here struggling to find people to move to Athens? I've had that, a couple of clients who, they compete with the Atlanta area, and that's a little bit of struggle.
Well, and go back to the point about people in Athens, I graduated in June 2015. I worked in real estate consulting. And folks that, most people that come to Athens are typically from the Atlanta area. And getting them to stay is sometimes a shift because they correlate Athens with college experience. And not necessarily settling down and relating with people that are perhaps older than themselves. So usually, even a few job graduates still typically the next person in every grade. So it's kind of a cultural shift for whereas they can go to Buckhead or Atlanta and be surrounded by those.
That's right. If they can get work that they like, for a job that pays fairly, for a place where there's opportunity that fits with their life. That's where we get with the fit with their life thing, right? To work with great people and for a boss who cares. There is going to be another company out there in a different city delivering on all of that, and you're competing with those people. So building that relationship, making sure you know when the employee is starting to get, like, they're starting to age out of the college age group and they're starting to look around and they're like, I don't want to be in my 30s and in Athens. Great manager sniffs that out before it actually happens and starts having conversations with that direct report about those sorts of things before it gets to a crisis point and the employee turns in a 2 weeks notice with no one expecting it. It's something you want to see coming. So I'm gonna move on and talk a little bit more about that when we talk about retaining talent. But before we do that, I want to talk about training. Okay. First, the pain point is that with obtaining talent, like where do they even come from? How do we get them in the door? Because the idea is to have so many in the door that you can say, hey, wait, only 3 this month. I'll call you when we have another opening. That's the goal. But the question now is, what does it look like to have a best-in-class training program? Because if you do get people who maybe don't match your expectations, who are not as skilled as the people you would want, how can you get them up to speed and get them up to speed quickly? So it's not rocket science, but it does require intentionality. You have to intentionally plan for it. If you haven't spent like 1 or 2 or 3 days thinking about what it feels like and looks like to be a new employee in your company or in your department, and you're not sure on the first day, you have an admin who's running around trying to get like the computer passwords together, you have tech, you have somebody who's like, oh wait, who can take so-and-so to lunch, and wait, what are they doing on their first day, and did anyone get their business cards, and it's a little bit of a scramble. That's not good. That's not good enough these days. There are too many other companies out there who have it together, who candidates are going to want to work for. They want to feel like they are a welcomed part of the new part of the team. They want to feel loved on, and we don't want to over-glamorize somebody who has not contributed to the company yet, and somebody who's showing up and are getting paid for it. But it is incumbent upon the company to make a new hire feel welcome and to show them that they care. So create systems. One of my companies now has a program called the Great First Day. The Great First Day. Everybody in the company knows what the Great First Day involves. And you know what it does involve? It involves the candidate doesn't show up till 10. You know why? Because it takes a lot of stress off that candidate, and it takes a lot of stress off the new boss, right? Because the new candidate, they're going to get there at like 9:45, or if they're supposed to come in at 8, they come in at 7:45, and then the new boss isn't there yet. Let the new candidate come in at 10. It's something easy to do. Have Sarah or Jerry take them to lunch every first day. You got your first day lunch person, right? have their welcome packet, have all the information they need to know, all the paperwork they need to fill out, all the basic training you want them to do, ready to go for them. You need to be leveraging technology. You got to train them fast, right? Especially if you have high turnover. You've got to get them in, you've got to train them fast. So be leveraging technology. Right now, handbooks are kind of a thing of the past. Like, it's great to have handbooks, and you need to have handbooks, and documenting your processes is important, especially for legal concerns and for people to refer back to. But right now, the younger generations coming out of college, they don't learn through handbooks. They learn through shadowing experiences and videos. But now it's more easy than ever for you to shoot videos, training your people, and to let those videos be available to them in a computer software program. So I'm a big fan of Trainual. Has anyone heard of this program? Okay, right. So because you can assess, you can make sure that they went through certain elements that you provide training on, and then you can give them assessments, and you can document that they took those assessments. You can put your employee handbook in Trainual, which is good too, because when you get their agreement that they've read and been trained on, everything legally that you need to train your people on, it's documentation for your business, and it can prevent some lawsuits. But there's no reason that any job, whether it be selling clothes or cutting hair or running a daycare or working in a construction company or any other design service agency, working in a bank, there's literally nothing, even in my world of consulting, which is very one-on-one, very client-based, very nuanced, and it takes a lot to be able to read people's emotions. Even that can be taught in a series of videos. And even that can be captured and put into a file where somebody coming into the Lion Leadership Fold can come in and I can say, hey, welcome to your great first day. This is your agenda for the day, and during this period, you're going to be watching this hour-long block of content to get you trained up. We're not going to make you watch 8 hours of content in a row, but for today, this is your first block today, and we'll ask you questions about it later. I also am a big fan of 30, 60, and 90-day reviews and empowering managers to have those reviews and to have tough conversations early, because everybody is scared to hire somebody, especially a mid-level hire that requires more skill, that's going to be, making $70, $80, $90, $100,000. Inviting someone from the outside to a job like that is scary, because you feel like you're getting married to somebody, and it's an expensive reception. So you want to make sure it's going to work out. But even for that level, you can have these reviews, and it doesn't have to be intimidating to candidates. It doesn't have to be like, and then you're fired if it's not working out after 30 days. But you can plan to have really pointed conversations at 30, 60, and 90 days. And I would recommend that everybody do that with every new hire. Of course, I run into who has time for that, Natasha? And I say, your managers have to have time for it. If you don't have great managers pouring into your people with their sole purpose of existence being to obtain them and to train them and to retain them, then there's something wrong with your management. I got ahead of myself. I was so right? How can I find time? It is the job. Okay, so this is so funny. This is the come to Jesus talk I have with my clients when they're like, I don't have people, and I train them, and then they leave, and I don't have time. I'm so busy putting out fires. It's just easier for me to do it myself. You guys know this mantra, right? I think it's after lunch, so nobody's going to acknowledge it heartedly, but you know this mantra because I hear it from clients all the time. For management, you have to make training the priority. You have to be able to find teachable moments. You have to be able to give feedback in real time. So when you're walking out of a client meeting, getting into the car, in the old days when we used to get into cars because we had face-to-face client meetings, going back and saying, how'd that go? How do you think that went? What do you think you could have done better under certain circumstances? What could have derailed you? Or, hey, you remember when I started to approach the conversation by discussing X, Y, and Z? This is the reason I did that. You have to train on those soft skills, and you have to train on them in real time. Even if it's a sales position, like you're working the showroom of like a carpet, it's Dalton Carpet, not here, but if you're working someplace like that, You have to teach your salespeople how to be great salespeople, and it has to be done in real time. Like, hey, how'd it go with that client walking in? Okay, what could you have done better? If I had approached the client, I would have done this. What do you think about that? So as James Whitley was just saying, you need to crave feedback, and you have to create a culture where feedback is constantly given. The next question I get, right? What if they make mistakes? Like, what if they totally screw it up? What if they create like a complete, dumpster fire that I have to put out? Then it's just going to be more, I think I hear this more from moms than I do from like my coaching clients, or maybe it's my mom, the moms that are at the office as well, because what they see is like, I'm not going to let my kid do this, because if they do this, then I'm going to have to clean up the mess, and I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to clamp down really hard and not let them do this, because it's always going to come back to get me, right, and suck more of my time. But this is the thing. You have to let them make mistakes. The quicker they make mistakes, the better they're going to be, sooner. And it's not that hard to look at the client, or to look at the customer, or to look at the anybody interacting with them, the third party, and say, hey, Amy's a little green, so I'm going to send her your way. Let me know how it goes. That way, Amy knows it's an opportunity, and the client knows that there's somebody new coming in, and they now have an initial buy-in to the company. Okay, I'm supposed to report back and let them know how this went, right? It's not that hard. It just requires a little bit of intentionality and a conversation and planning for it. Okay, let me go back here real quick, though. This is what it looks like from the candidate's perspective. If the company's perspective is, oh, it's so hard to train, who has time for this? How do I do it more quickly? This is what the candidate's worried about. This is all they're worried about. Who's in charge? What do I need to do? How do I do that? Where do I go if I need help? When do I check in? Is this right, and can I get better? This is a very genuine approach to work. And unlike older generations, the younger and younger generations that are coming up into the workplace, they want feedback. They don't want you to sugarcoat anything. They want you to speak directly to them. If you look at them, one day you're going to have to look at a younger worker one day, and you're going to say, hey, look, I noticed you came into the meeting 15 minutes late with the Starbucks in your hand. And you're going to have to look at them and say, hey, look, I need to ask that you not do that anymore, because you probably couldn't read the room the same way I could, but I need to let you know that everyone was a little miffed about that, because what you've done is you're symbolizing your time's more important than their time. And that employee is going to be so grateful for that feedback, it would shock you, because they had no idea. They had no idea. The younger and younger generations, what we've noticed, and which a lot of academic literature will show, is they don't read in between the lines. This is what I like to call the count to three generation. And I've used this in previous talks, if some of you have come to my previous talks. But it's the count to three generation, and I'll give you an example. And Miss Pippin right here can testify. She's seen it in action. I have a son, a 3-year-old son, and I'll say, son, stop hitting your sister with the stick. It's hurting her. She's crying. It's wrong. It's bad. Mom, son, stop hitting your sister with a stick. Son, stop. Son, I'm going to count to 3. Mom's getting angry. I'm going to count to 3, and then you're going to go to your room to time out. And then I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to take him to his room to time out. So what I've done in that instance is I have over-communicated the obvious. My son should have seen the crazy in my eye. He should have known before anything came out of my mouth, right, that he was doing something wrong and something was about to happen to him. But he didn't, and he relied on my words. So if you take my son, who's 3, and you add 20 years to him, and he becomes 23, and he's in the workplace, he's not going to read the crazy in his boss's eyes. He's not going to read the disappointment in his coworkers' like passive-aggressive glance. He's going to wait on the words. He wants to know, what do I need to do? How do I do that? Where do I go for help? When do I check in? Is this right, and can I get better? and he's going to depend on someone's words and time and relationship with him in order to do that. So that is what training programs in the current modern workplace look like today. Is they look like real-time training with real-time words, with real-time people who the candidate can trust and depend on and know who to go to if they have a problem. If your company's training program doesn't look like this, then it is going to be hard to retain top talent, which brings me to the last point that I want to make in today's talk. People ask me, okay, great, I found them. I finally found them. It took me a long time, but I found the honey hole of great people. I got my flywheel going. We had this interview process. It's awesome. I got my great first day going. We've got training down to a science. We have someone up to speed in 10 working days, right? Everybody's on board, and they're still leaving after 2 years. Usually I go back to that clarity on the the career trajectory, because that's usually the crunch point. But if that's not working, people say, what do I do? How do I retain junior people long enough to keep them for an ROI? And how do I keep my senior people forever? Forevers and evers. Because there's some people you just don't want to lose. But from the candidate's perspective, we're back to this very genuine, simple thing. Can I do work that I like for a fair amount of pay, that has opportunity, that fits my life, with people who are great to work with, and for a boss who cares? Did you know that 75% of people who quit a job, they'll say things like, oh, it's because, my spouse got a job in Cincinnati, or I need to move closer to my mom in Florida, or, I wasn't looking for a job, but this really great opportunity came up, and they're offering me, $145,000. Most of those people, what they're actually saying and thinking is, I hate my boss, and you're the boss. So that's a problem. Most people leave because of the manager. In fact, Gallup just put out a book called It's the Manager. And it's a 350-page book, because it's the manager. It's always been the manager. People quit. Why did you quit your last job? Why did you quit any job you've ever quit or left? Most of the time is because of the manager. Now, you stay for managers you love. Sometimes life gets in the way, but for the most part, you stay with managers you love. So, managers can be great if they commit and stay consistent. If you want to keep a junior for a return on your investment in them, you need to make sure they get what they need. Don't lessen your standards, but make sure they get what they need, and be consistent. Juniors love consistency, okay? So I have an example schedule here for you to stay consistent with. Managers, once a week one-on-ones with your direct reports, 3-month feedback and check-in appointments, right? A performance review every 3 months, or a conversation about how to level up every 3 months. Quarterly intra-development, meaning inside the office, and quarterly inter-development, inside the person and between people. So that person's going to want to develop for themselves, but they also need to develop in terms of working with others. So 4 times a year, you need to offer some opportunity for this to happen. And then twice a year, offer a professional development opportunity like this, like going off-site to do something. You give these development opportunities and you consistently follow through on them. You tell them that I'm going to give you feedback every 3 months, and you consistently do that. And you tell them I care enough about you to make 30 minutes of time for you every single week. You are building a relationship, a winning relationship. You're showing them that you care. They are getting to do work that they like for people who are awesome, right? You're meeting all of their needs. But and we know, because life is so busy, how many times have you gone in to meet with your boss and they're 5 minutes late? Or there's no real agenda items, and so they're like, oh, there's not really any agenda items, let's just wait till next week. Or they're like, hey, I've got something popped up, I need to switch you to Tuesday at 4:50. For direct reports, that's a big deal. The higher up you go, you forget about that. But that time between a manager and a direct report, that 30 minutes once a week, even if there's nothing to talk about, that is what I like to call eyeball time, and you have to make the investment. If you want, so this is where people get a little tense because they're like, oh, Natasha, I wanted you to tell us how to obtain, train, and retain great talent. And I tell you, this is one of the things you have to do. You have to sit down with them once a week for 30 minutes and look them in the eyeball and listen to Jimmy John's neighbor's story about our golden retriever. They don't want to do that, but that's the answer because you have to build the relationship. Because people will leave you if you don't build a relationship with them and they don't trust you and they don't feel like you care about them. So for seniors, this is the good news and the bad news. Well, you win some, you lose some, okay? So you need to intentionally plan for it. You have to understand that it's not the 7-year itch anymore, it's the 4-year itch. So after about 3 years of working on a job, 3.5, 4 years, people are going to get an itch and they're going to start thinking, what's next for me? And if your company doesn't have a plan every 2 years, 4 years, 8 years, and 12 years for some change that they can look forward to and participate in a celebratory act, then you need to think that they're going to be looking for that elsewhere. And that's fine. Sometimes after 2 years, you want somebody to go, you know? Maybe they weren't a great fit. They were okay, but they weren't great. In fact, in some really tough conversations with some really competitive companies, which it's okay, by the way, to have an incredibly competitive company. Not every company culture needs to be kumbaya and Shangri-La and everybody's friends and we're all very nice to each other. Some companies I work with have very competitive cultures. And the point is to throw as many elbows as you can to get to the top because that's how they win, okay? And for these companies, and I'm coaching their managers, I coach on how to manage people out. You know how I coach people to manage people out? Start canceling your weekly one-on-ones. Start canceling your weekly one-on-ones. Don't give them a promotion. Don't give them the feedback. Don't continue to invest in the relationship. Don't give them mission-critical assignments. And they leave. But that's done with intention. Think of how many times this is also done unintentionally for great people. All right. So I definitely have the wiggles. And I want to take this and walk around, but I can't. Those are all the remarks I have prepared for this session today. Like I said, if you guys are looking for a mindset shift or a pep talk or for me to tell you a story to get you inspired, I'm not the right person. I am a trainer. I'm here to tell you, if you want to obtain, train, and retain top talent, this is your to-do list. So I did see a lot of you guys taking notes. I also saw a lot of you guys staring at me like a deer in headlights, which makes me concerned. I don't know if that's like a Chick-fil-A lunch issue or if that's wow, this is a lot of work that I need to do, and I don't know if I have time issue. But we have about 10 minutes. And I have actually, can you believe that? I planned on this to be 50 minutes, and it's like right on 50 minutes. Awesome. But let me take some questions, and or let's do some brainstorms. If you guys are really facing a problem, we've got a lot of really smart people in the room, and we can wrap our brains together on it. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, first of all, you should be proud of yourself for your own willingness to delegate probably something that was really important to you to somebody else. Because we all struggle with that, right? Especially if you've built your business from the ground up on your back, to even just be able to give a key to somebody else is, that's really a hard hurdle for a lot of people to get over. And then when the person doesn't do it up to snuff, it can be completely discouraging. So how do you make sure your people are ready for what's coming next? Number one, I would say make sure your systems are in place so that you can have these structured coaching conversations. If there's not already a system in place, being able to come back, using conferences or classes as a hook for change is awesome. I tell students this all the time. You go back into your department and you say, hey, look, I went to a session on how to be a better manager, and this is what they recommended. And so starting from today onwards, we're going to have 4 coaching, meetings a year. Let's go ahead and get them on the calendar. It just opens the door for you to make a change. And so once you have that system in place, in those coaching conversations, that's a great opportunity for you to open the conversation by saying, what's going well for you? What do you think's not going well? From my perspective, this is going well, but this isn't going well. And you can just have the dialogue. So, number one, making sure a system's in place so that you can have comfortable dialogue is important. Number two, making sure they have, being a great manager and a great leader doesn't come naturally. And I think we've probably, all of us in this room have learned this. You can't just be a decent person and hope it works out. There is some training that's needed, and training can come in the form, a lot of different forms. It can come in the form of an MBA, it can come in the form of executive education, it can come in the form of professional development like this, or reading books or listening to podcasts or whatever. But I like for all companies, especially if you're trying to level up a leader or a manager, to have like a management, it depends on your size, and it sounds like you've just gotten there, like in terms of developing a manager developing program. But if you have a management developing program that's unique to your business, you can have people reading the same books. You can have people listening to the same podcast. You can have people meeting every week on Fridays for lunch to talk about a topic that you give them to talk about. You can have speakers coming in. You can have them getting additional training, and it can be, super expensive, or it can be super not expensive. It depends on what you want them to get. But you have to have a system set for open dialogue and a system set for learning and development to come in. For companies who struggle with underperformers, like chronic underperformers where they're going to have to terminate the employee if they don't step up. Usually for those employees, I recommend like an individual coaching package. And so for example, line leadership gets calls all the time. Like, we have somebody we're trying to level up, and we need it to happen fast. Can you put them through a personal coaching program? And we do. Sometimes I get calls like, we have somebody who's not leveling up fast. We don't think it's going to work out. We want to offer them a coaching program so they can find their next job. Can you do that? And so you just want to give them the resources and put them in an environment where they can grow, because they might not have the ability to say, hey, this is hard for me, or I'm not sure I'm doing this right, because they don't know what they don't know. Mm-hmm. Do you think they could handle a 360 review, or are they too not seasoned enough?
So we sat down and had a tough review, and this person comes from a previous management role where they were undermined a lot, and they were a bad manager. So I kind of ride this like wacky wave of, and this person's a great performer, but they're a doer, and I want them to be a leader.
So that, we call that, like, a lot of times we'll refer to that as the leadership identity, and people have to step onto the leadership stage before they get it. And some people who step out onto the leadership stage and have a bad experience, and this happens a lot with women actually, they run off the stage never to return. Because they look out, they look for approval, they don't find it, and they run away. So getting back out into that leadership stage and putting on that leadership identity, it's like trying on a new pair of jeans. And sometimes it just takes a cognitive reframe in their mind to say, okay, this is the narrative that fits me and serves me better than the narrative I'm using right now. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
I don't necessarily have a question, but I wanted to speak to your point about the candidate's perspective, that flow chart that you had. I'm a recent graduate, May 2020, so I'm entering into a really tough job market. I want to say that your flow chart is absolutely spot on. That's what we want. count us out. We're coming from some of the most competitive schools. It's harder to get in. It's harder to thrive, and then to get into organizations within those schools. We're the most diverse, generation that you've ever seen, and we are also on track to becoming the most well-educated generation that you've ever seen. And since entering the job market, I've had a lot of people cut me down before I can even take my first step. And so I wanted to let you guys know that we're coming. So let us enter, let us work hard for you, and let us show you that competitive spirit.
Yeah, in my experience, I was nose to nose with college students for 7 years teaching at UGA. And I do like to think that my superpower is the ability to speak 20-year-old and 50-year-old. So like I hear it, like it's so hard on this end of the spectrum and it's so hard on this end of the spectrum. So both ends need pep talks, right? So, to the 20-year-olds out there, it's like, we're shaping the companies as fast as possible to get ready for you. But this generation of workers is different than the generation that is leading the companies right now. And so those company leaders, are beating their heads up against the wall saying, why doesn't it work the way I'm used to it working? Like, why aren't these people like me? And I'm like, because they're not. Let's move on. We have to redesign because you're right. You're coming. 75% of the workplace by 2030 will be people under the age of 35. So we have to bank systems and get ready for that. Exactly. Yes, sir. 2 minutes. That looked like a hand raise.
How long typically do your personal coaching programs last for a manager?
So-
Without a developed necessary like job description, like we're still in the determining exact job descriptions, determining if another position needs to be, saying, and I know those are two different things, and so it's hard to coach the manager on without having a really clear job description.
So I have two thoughts that are not linear in my head right now, which is hard. One is, for example, there are lots of coaches out there, but from the Lion Leadership Platform, we offer a coaching program called Accelerate. And it's an 8-session coaching program that includes a personality assessment and a 360 review. And based on that information, we customize 6, it's kind of training coaching sessions. So we'll send a 10-minute lesson to the client, personalized lesson for them on one of the 6 skills we've designated as one they need to develop. And then we spend a session kind of reflecting on that lesson. And I will say coaching, like that sort of development, there's a steeping time. Like, so you go through a coaching program like that, and then it's not until like 3 or 4 months later that it starts to click. Those packages, though, they're a major investment into your employees. But what you said just made me think of, we do offer custom in-house training programs, and for businesses who pull together, because it's like a general management development, a general leadership development program, you're just trying to invest in your people so that they're ready for what you can to provide to them when the right time comes. Then it might make sense for people to pull together and get a cohort of people together to go through a custom program. And what we've done in the past is we let people pick out their kind of the titles of the courses they would like their people to take, and then we find facilitators for all of those courses and bring them in weekly for like lunch and learns. And that's a lot cheaper if you're going to put a lot of people through it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I have a question. Could you talk about personality assessments? I know a company that I work with is huge on personality development, understanding yourself, how you can relate to other people. How big is that? Understanding yourself and understanding how the different personality profiles relate to who you're trying to hire and retain.
I'm so glad you asked that question. So personality testing is, some people roll their eyes and some people get like really geek out on this stuff. So personality assessments to me are great because no matter which one you do, if you do the Myers-Briggs, if you do the DISC, if you do the Hogan, the Colby, the Enneagram, the Berkman, whatever's out there, whatever you take online, 16 personalities, the whole thing. Everyone can give you a little golden nugget of information about yourself and make you think about your life and your work and your behavior in a new way. And that guarantees improvement. Nobody has ever learned something about the way they are and gotten worse as a result, you know? So personality assessments are great for personal development. When you use them in the business context, it's great because the thing with business is you work with other people. And it's important for you to know how those people come to understand you and perceive you so that you can be the most effective you can be. And you also need to get to know that your coworkers and the people around you. So especially if you're working with coworkers that you get triggered by, like that coworker who's the sound of their voice grates on your nerves and you want to like jump out of your chair because you know they're coming. You know those people. There is a solution for that. What you're dealing with is like a toxic co-working relationship, but going through a personality assessment with this other person and understanding each other through new lenses sometimes can soften those nerves enough to where you can rebuild a good working relationship together. And so with that in mind, that's one way that personality assessments can help with team dysfunction. But when you're hiring, absolutely. I have a company right now. I'm not certified in Myers-Briggs, but this company uses Myers-Briggs, and they have 10 years of data on personality profiles of their employees, and they have personality profiles for all their rockstar employees. And so now when they hire, they look for that personality because they know that personality is going to be successful in the context of their company. And so they lean on it, and they make hiring decisions based on it. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to stay if you have more questions. I also have cards up here if you'd like one. Okay, thank you for coming.